Welcome to Classified Capsule, where we uncover the untold stories of history's most notorious criminals. Today we delve into the early life of H. Holmes, America's first documented serial killer. Let's get started. Herman Webster Mudgett was born on May 16, 1861, in Gilmanton, New Hampshire, a small and rural town. He was the third of 5 children in a family with deep New England roots. His father, Levi Horton Mudgett, was a strict disciplinarian and a farmer, while his mother, Theodate Page Price, was a devout Methodist and a homemaker. The Mudgett household was typical of the time, rigid and governed by a strong moral code. From a young age, Herman displayed signs of intelligence and curiosity, which set him apart from his peers. However, his childhood was not without its difficulties. He was subjected to bullying by other children, which reportedly included being forced to touch and examine a human skeleton at his school. This traumatic experience is often cited as a pivotal moment in his life, sparking an early fascination with anatomy and death. Herman's interest in medicine and anatomy grew stronger as he aged. He was an exceptional student, particularly in subjects related to science and biology. In 1878, at the age of 17, he graduated from high school and began pursuing higher education. He enrolled at the University of Vermont in Burlington but left after only a year, dissatisfied with the program. In 1882, Herman transferred to the University of Michigan's Department of Medicine and Surgery. Here, he found an environment that nurtured his macabre interests. He excelled in his studies and developed a keen understanding of human anatomy. It was during this period that his darker tendencies began to surface. Herman was known to steal cadavers from the university's laboratory, which he used to commit insurance fraud by taking out policies on the fictitious identities of these bodies and then mutilating them to make it appear as though they had died in accidents. Herman's time at the University of Michigan marked the beginning of his criminal career. His fascination with anatomy and death evolved into a more sinister pursuit. His fraudulent activities with cadavers indicated a complete lack of empathy and a manipulative nature. He would take out life insurance policies on fictitious people, then use the stolen cadavers to claim the insurance money. After graduating in 1884, Herman briefly worked as a teacher before moving to Moores Forks, New York, where he became a principal at a local school. During his time there, a young boy went missing, and although Herman was suspected, no charges were filed. This incident foreshadowed the sinister path his life would take. In 1878, while still a student, Herman married Clara Lovering in Alton, New Hampshire. The marriage was troubled from the start. Clara described Herman as violent and erratic, and the couple eventually separated, though they never legally divorced. Despite this separation, Herman continued to present himself as a respectable family man. He later married Myrta Belknap in 1887, committing bigamy as he was still legally married to Clara. With Myrta, he had a daughter named Lucy Theodate Holmes. Despite outward appearances of normalcy, Herman was living a double life, continuing his fraudulent schemes and laying the groundwork for his future crimes. In 1886, Herman Webster Mudgett arrived in Chicago and adopted the alias Dr. Henry Howard Holmes, or H. Holmes. It was under this name that he would commit his most notorious crimes. He initially found work in a pharmacy, but soon bought the business after the original owner mysteriously disappeared. With the financial success of the pharmacy, Holmes purchased an empty lot across the street and began constructing a building that would become known as his murder castle. The structure, ostensibly a hotel and retail space, was designed with secret passageways, soundproof rooms, and trap doors. The basement was equipped for dissection and disposal of bodies. The building's labyrinthine design allowed Holmes to carry out his gruesome activities undetected. Holmes used his charm and intelligence to attract investors and partners, whom he later swindled. He continued his insurance fraud schemes, taking out policies on employees and associates who would later disappear. His criminal activities extended beyond murder. He was involved in various scams, including selling fake medicines and goods. Psychological profile and motivations. Holmes's early life and education suggest a complex psychological profile. His high intelligence and fascination with anatomy were coupled with a complete lack of moral restraint. His childhood experiences of bullying and exposure to death likely played a role in shaping his later behavior. Holmes's charm and charisma allowed him to manipulate those around him, while his meticulous nature enabled him to plan and execute his crimes with precision. The Murder Castle. The centerpiece of Holmes's criminal activities was his so-called Murder Castle, a three-story building in Chicago's Englewood neighborhood. Officially named the World's Fair Hotel, it was constructed in 1887, just in time for the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition. The building's design was a labyrinthine structure that included soundproof rooms, secret passageways, trapdoors, and a basement equipped for sinister activities. Holmes personally oversaw the construction, frequently hiring and firing workers to ensure that no one fully understood the building's layout. The first floor of the building housed shops and Holmes's pharmacy, where he charmed customers and built his outward reputation as a respectable businessman. The second and third floors contained a variety of rooms and offices, many of which were outfitted with hidden gas lines, peepholes, and asphyxiation chambers. Holmes used these rooms to trap and kill his victims, often after luring them with promises of employment, housing, or romance. Methods of murder. Holmes's methods of murder were as varied as they were gruesome. He would often sedate his victims before moving them to a designated room, where they would be asphyxiated using the hidden gas lines. Some rooms were soundproof and airtight, allowing Holmes to leave his victims to suffocate. He also had chutes installed in the walls, which he used to transport bodies down to the basement without attracting attention. The basement of the Murder Castle was a macabre workshop. Here, Holmes conducted experiments on the bodies of his victims, dismembering them and stripping the flesh from their bones. He had a crematorium installed for disposing of the remains, and it is believed that he sold some of the skeletons to medical schools and laboratories. Holmes's medical training allowed him to dismember bodies with precision, further obscuring the identities of his victims and the evidence of his crimes. Insurance fraud and swindles. Beyond murder, Holmes was deeply involved in various forms of fraud and swindling. He took out life insurance policies on many of his victims, using their deaths to collect substantial payouts. His charm and intelligence made him adept at manipulating people into trusting him, only to betray them for financial gain. One of his most elaborate schemes involved a fellow criminal named Benjamin Petetzel. Holmes convinced Petetzel to fake his own death so that they could split the insurance money. However, instead of staging a fake death, Holmes killed Petetzel and proceeded to manipulate Petetzel's wife and children, leading them across the country while systematically murdering 3 of the 5 Petetzel children. The World's Columbian Exposition. The 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago provided Holmes with a steady stream of potential victims. The fair attracted millions of visitors, many of whom were young women traveling alone or in small groups. Holmes advertised his hotel as a safe and affordable place to stay, only to prey on those who accepted his offer. The anonymity of the fair allowed Holmes to operate with relative impunity, as the influx of visitors made it difficult for authorities to track disappearances. The beginning of the end. Holmes's downfall began with his involvement in various insurance fraud schemes, which he carried out with the same meticulous planning that characterized his murders. In 1894, Holmes met Benjamin Petetzel, a small-time criminal who would become an accomplice in one of Holmes's most ambitious frauds. The plan was simple. Petetzel would fake his own death, and Holmes would collect the $10,000 life insurance payout, which they would split. However, Holmes had no intention of sharing the money. Instead, he murdered Petetzel and convinced Petetzel's wife, Carrie, that her husband was hiding in London. Holmes then took 3 of the Petetzel children, Alice, Nellie, and Howard, on a gruesome journey across the Midwest, during which he systematically murdered them as well. The disappearance of the Petetzel children and the inconsistencies in Holmes's story drew the attention of Pinkerton National Detective Agency, who had been tracking Holmes for several months due to his various fraudulent activities. Detective Frank Geyer was assigned to the case and began a dogged investigation that would unravel Holmes's web of deceit. Geyer's investigation led him to uncover the bodies of Alice and Nellie Petetzel in the cellar of a rented house in Toronto. Howard's remains were found in a house in Indianapolis where Holmes had stayed during his journey. The meticulous manner in which the bodies were concealed and the lengths Holmes went to cover his tracks only underscored the brutality of his crimes. Holmes was arrested in Boston on November 17, 1894, for the insurance fraud scheme related to Petetzel. Initially, he was charged with fraud, but as the investigation into the Petetzel murders deepened, the full extent of his crimes began to surface. Holmes was extradited to Philadelphia, where he faced charges for the murder of Benjamin Petetzel. During his time in prison, Holmes displayed his characteristic charm and manipulation, giving several conflicting confessions about his crimes. He admitted to 27 murders, but some estimates suggest he may have been responsible for up to 200 deaths. His ability to lie convincingly and his calm demeanor during the interrogations and trial fascinated the public and the press. Trial and execution. Holmes's trial began on October 28, 1895. The courtroom was packed with spectators eager to see the man who had become infamous for his crimes. The prosecution presented a compelling case, with evidence from the Petetzel murder and testimonies from witnesses who had encountered Holmes during his criminal activities. The evidence was overwhelming, and on November 4, 1895, the jury found Holmes guilty of murder. He was sentenced to death. While awaiting execution, Holmes penned his memoirs, in which he claimed that he was possessed by Satan and blamed his actions on a supernatural force. His writings further intrigued the public, but did little to sway the authorities. On May 7, 1896, Holmes was hanged at Moyamensing Prison in Philadelphia. Even in his final moments, he remained calm and unrepentant, maintaining his composure until the very end. The discovery of the murder castle. While Holmes was in custody, authorities began to investigate his infamous murder castle in Chicago. The building, designed and constructed with an array of trapdoors, hidden rooms, and torture chambers, was a testament to Holmes's twisted ingenuity. The search of the murder castle revealed a house of horrors, soundproof rooms, gas chambers, and a crematorium, all used to dispose of his victims. The discovery of the murder castle confirmed the extent of Holmes's cruelty and meticulous planning. It also highlighted the challenges faced by law enforcement in the late 19th century, where communication and coordination between different jurisdictions were limited. The investigation into the murder castle ultimately helped shape future approaches to criminal investigations and forensic science. Legacy and impact. The story of H.H. Holmes left an indelible mark on American criminal history. His ability to manipulate and deceive, combined with his ruthless approach to murder, made him one of the most notorious figures of his time. Holmes's crimes also had a significant impact on law enforcement practices, particularly in the areas of forensic science and criminal psychology. The investigation and trial of H.H. Holmes highlighted the importance of thorough and coordinated investigative work. Detective Frank Geyer's relentless pursuit of the truth and his methodical approach to gathering evidence set a precedent for future investigations. The case also underscored the need for improved record-keeping and communication between police departments, which would later become standard practice. Holmes's life and crimes have continued to captivate the public imagination. His story has been the subject of numerous books, films, and television shows, each exploring different aspects of his dark legacy. The fascination with Holmes is not just a reflection of his gruesome deeds, but also a testament to the enduring intrigue surrounding the minds of serial killers and the mechanisms of their downfall. Thank you for watching this episode of Classified Capsule. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history's dark past. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest content. See you next time.